Nights don't go quiet. They hold their breath. That's what I learned during the blackout. The way a town pauses like a living thing, deciding what it will keep and what it won't. When there's no hum of refrigerators or traffic or phone screens, you start hearing the old sounds again. Wind along gutters, insects stitching the dark together, the click of a breaker somewhere, trying and failing. In that kind of quiet, you notice who belongs and who is simply present. 3 years ago, a late October storm took down power across our county. I volunteered at the high school gym, which the town opened as a warming center. I was 26, familiar with the place, and not useful in any glamorous way. Mostly extension cords, coffee urns, and pointing people to cots. Behind the gym, in a cinder block shed, the school kept a diesel generator the size of a small car. Facilities gave me a ring of keys and a laminated checklist. Fuel, choke, start, listen. The shed wasn't on any official tour. If the lights dimmed, I was supposed to jog back, tap the gauges, and pretend I knew what I was doing. By sunset the first night, the gym became a strange, hushed city. Seniors in lawn chairs, toddlers under quilts, dogs asleep on shoes. The scoreboard threw off a steady green glow like a low moon. Sometime after 9, the lights flickered. I went out. The rain had thinned to mist, and the field behind the school was a sheet of dark satin under the emergency lamps. Inside the shed, the generator was warm and steady, a big cat purring. I checked the list. Fuel good. Oil good. Nothing to fix. I turned to leave and heard singing. Not words, more like a breathy scale, a woman warming up before a song. I stepped back outside. The field was empty. The gym flickered again. I went to the shed door to call maintenance on the radio, and the singing came a second time. Closer now, odd and precise, like someone standing on the far side of the cinder block, tracing notes against the wall. I pressed my palm to the cool concrete. The generator thrummed through my bones. The voice threaded between beats. A man from the cot rose. Harold, a retired mail carrier, had followed me out to smoke. He stood 20 feet away under the overhang. Thin jacket, hat pulled low. He lifted 2 fingers in a small wave, and then, very slowly, pointed at the running track beyond the field. I squinted. In the mist, something pale moved at lane 2, pacing the oval. Not a light, not a person exactly, a shadow with edges, keeping even time. It made the track look like an old record rotating under a needle. Back in the gym, the principal said stay visible, keep calm. The lights steadied. Harold returned to his cot and slept with his coat on. Near midnight, the scoreboard went black. The room exhaled. I jogged out with my keys. The generator was fine. As I reached for the clipboard, the singing started again from the outer wall, little vowels touching the concrete. Like a teacher demonstrating mouth shapes. I put my ear to the seam of the door. Cold air leaked through. It tasted faintly of diesel and something floral, like an old church. I opened the shed. The mist had thickened. The track was empty. When I closed the door, a fresh handprint bloomed on the glass pane. 5 slender fingers, too long, fog from the outside. It vanished in a second like breath on a mirror. At 2 a.m., a deputy came to sit a while. Their radios were overloaded with down lines and fender benders at dark intersections. He told me the track had a reputation, something about a student who'd collapsed their years before at a spring meet. I nodded like I'd heard it too. I hadn't. His radio crackled, and he left to direct traffic by the highway. By dawn, the storm moved on, and the town warmed just enough to smell like wet leaves and coffee. We sent people home in a slow migration. A flock scattered back to its normal trees. I returned the keys, walked the field one last time, and found Harold's hat on the bleachers, beaded with dew. I brought it inside. He wasn't there. Check-in said Harold left before sunrise. Facilities said they'd locked the shed after fuel delivery. The deputy didn't answer. A week later, when the power company mailed out the storm impact letter, it included a list of partner agencies that had assisted. At the bottom, in a smaller font, there was a line, "In memory of H. Brantley, volunteer since 1997. I recognized the surname for his hat's laundry tag. The letter was printed on the previous year's template. Sometimes at night, I walk past the school with my headphones off. The new LED field lights make the track look clean and uncomplicated. There's a fresh padlock on the generator shed, a new checklist with tidy boxes. I don't go closer. I just stand by the fence and listen for the breath between the lights, the space where the old sound hides. Most nights I hear nothing but my own blood. On damp ones, when the air is almost rain, something faint plays under the hum, a line of warmed-up notes climbing and settling again. The town calls what we did mutual aid. It sounds like a pact. I keep the hat on my hall tree in case anyone ever comes for it. They won't. The generator starts fine now. But every time the gym lights flicker on a windy evening, I think about a hand on cold glass and a name already printed on a memorial line, waiting patiently for the year to catch up. Freeways at night are made of promises. Every sign says keep moving. Something safe is up ahead. You believe it because the alternative is too large to hold. You trust the lane lines, trust the white reflectors when rain turns the road into a ribbon of metal. You trust that everyone else here wants to arrive as much as you do. I drove rideshare to cover a bad month. Halloween weekend was money. Airport runs, bar hoppers, suburban kids with fake IDs and glitter stuck to their cheeks. I kept water bottles in a soft cooler and wiped the seats at every stop. I'm not a talker. I let the car be a small, moving room where people could come down from wherever they'd been. Just before midnight, I accepted a pickup from Frontage Road behind an outlet mall that had closed years ago. The pin dropped near a shuttered food court where weeds had the parking spots memorized. The app named the rider L. No rating, no photo. A lot of people make new accounts on holiday weekends. I pulled into the lane, unlocked the doors, and watched the rear view. She slid in quietly, dark coat, hair tucked, the clean, cold smell of October clinging to her sleeves. She said a street name that wasn't a street name, more like by the old mill, by the bridge, in the way locals give directions. The app didn't like it. I typed in the nearest marker. The route stitched itself across the screen with one long blue vein. We drove through industrial blocks the city never repaints. The freeway opened. 410 exits. We were the only two people in a lit tunnel. She watched the shoulder like she was hunting for something just outside the glow. At mile marker 29, she said, "Not asked. Take the next ramp." The app rerouted, displeased. The ramp fed us onto a county road with patchy asphalt. Trees crowded the shoulder. The GPS showed blank fields where my headlights revealed warehouses asleep in their own light. At a stop sign with no cross traffic, she leaned forward enough that I felt the air change. The skin along my scalp tightened. That body knowledge that says something is deciding about you. "Here," she said, though there was no here. Only a construction site cul-de-sac with graders parked like sleeping animals. I stopped. She didn't move right away. Then she opened the door and slipped into the dark with that same quiet. No slam. No thanks. Just absence. Rideshare rules say you verify drop-off visually in safe areas. I put the car in park, flicked on my hazard lights, and watched the shoulder. My windshield fogged the edges. 30 seconds. A minute. The hazards ticked like a metronome, reminding me I was still in time. I turned off the hazards to hear better, and the road answered with a sound that felt wrong for open space. A low mechanical pulse, not the freeway, not the graders. A generator, maybe deep inside one of the unfinished buildings. I rolled down my window. The pulse rode the cold air into the car. It wasn't constant. It had the shape of breath. I should have left. Instead, I tapped the app to end trip. The fare screen asked me to rate L. I wrote nothing. That's when I saw it. The previous ride's dashcam thumbnail had a red dot in the corner, meaning motion saved. I don't pay for the cloud plan. It stores to an SD card in the unit. The thumbnail showed a frame from the pickup, a dark figure at the curb. Fine. But the second thumbnail had been captured during the drive, tagged at 12:12 a.m., and it wasn't a road view. It was the interior camera, set to record if someone touched the lens. It still showed the back seat, empty. I turned around. The seat belt on the passenger side was clipped. I hadn't heard it. The belt lay flat across the cushion like someone had smoothed it with their palm. I pulled the key and my little flashlight and stepped out. The pulse came again from the unfinished buildings, just long enough to make me count without meaning to. In the beam of the flashlight, the dust on the sidewalk looked like frost. The air smelled like wet gypsum and something metallic. On the curb where Elle had stepped out, a small puddle had formed around a storm drain grate. In the center of the puddle, touching the grate, lay a plastic wristband, the hospital kind they cut when you're discharged. The white strip had lines where letters had once lived, now smeared into a gray word that might have been a name and might have been a warning. I left. I picked up 2 more rides. Kids in novelty cloaks, a nurse in scrubs, to make the night feel round again. At home, I pulled the SD card, opened the footage, and watched the interior camera from the moment of pickup to the construction site. The back seat stayed empty the whole time. The exterior camera showed my car door open at the mall, the shape of a long coat sliding in, the seat compressing. Inside, nothing. Outside, someone there. Inside again, no one. The drop-off showed the door open, the seat rising like a held breath released. The belt lay flat. Gravel shifted. Air moved. No person. Rideshare support sent a canned reply and closed the ticket. 3 days later, a paper envelope arrived without a return address. Inside was the wristband, dried and clean, the letter sharpened by someone's careful hand. The name on it matched the one the local paper had printed in an old article the algorithm dragged up after I searched too long. A patient who'd left the county hospital against advice in 2018, last seen walking near the Outlet Mall Road. I don't drive nights anymore. When I pass mile marker 29 in daylight, I count the reflectors out of habit and try not to look at the graders. My dash cam faces the garage wall now, recording nothing in particular. Sometimes I play the interior clip again to reassure myself that absence is still absence, that an empty seat will stay empty if you film it correctly. The clip always ends the same. Hazard lights clicking, pulse riding the air, a door opening to let out someone I never fully let in. Old buildings have a way of remembering the people who are confident in them. Doors lean as if listening for a certain knock. Floors develop a rhythm you can identify room by room. That's not haunting, it's memory. The problem starts when the memory plays while no one is there to press play. I rented the ground floor of a brick fourplex at the edge of downtown. Cheap because the landlord hadn't modernized anything but the locks. Chlorinated stairwell, steam radiators that clanked, window frames that shed paint if you looked at them too hard. The unit above me had been empty since before I moved in. The landlord said the owner kept it unfurnished as a storage condo, and that the keys were special. He meant expensive, not mystical. In October, the building got colder faster than the weather. Pipes, old and blunt, sighed every night around 2. The stair light went from dim to faraway candle. I kept a space heater near my desk and learned which outlets were in good moods. The first time I heard footsteps above me, I thought, great, someone moved in at midnight. Slow pacing from front windows to kitchen, a pause, then back again. Not the shuffle of a tired person hauling boxes. A metronome of weight. The footsteps stopped at the same spot every pass, right over my sink, then turned. I texted the landlord. He said I was hearing radiators settling. Radiators don't wear shoes. 2 nights later, water ran in the upstairs bathroom. I could hear it through the vent, not gushing, just a steady, polite stream. I climbed the stairs and tried the knob. The lock resisted like an arm. I went back down and put a mug under my vent to catch the slow drip, now tapping from the ductwork. The drip smelled faintly like cologne and rust. The next morning, an envelope sat under my door with the landlord's name in block letters. Inside was a photocopy of the upstairs unit's floor plan, yellowed and taped at one edge. A note in pencil. "You're below 2B. Call me if it's noisy again. I'll swing by with the key." The graphite smudged like the note had been written in haste, or with a soft pencil that remembered a warmer hand. I slept on the couch that night to be closer to the footsteps, to prove to myself they were pipes. At 1:58 the pacing started. Front to kitchen. Stop. Return. I counted the boards. 9 steps out. Pause. 9 back. A new sound joined. Metal ticking as if a jar lid were being tightened very carefully. After the 6th loop, a cupboard door creaked. Not a building's creak. Hinges making up their mind. I texted the landlord again. This time he came. He's the kind of man whose silence is a tool. He stood under my vent, listening. The water stopped. He exhaled through his nose and said he'd be right back, then returned with a long key ring and the kind of flashlight mechanics respect. We went upstairs. He tried 3 keys before one turned. The latch pulled with reluctance. The unit smelled like fabric left in shade. The living room was empty. The kitchen had a single folding table with a roll of blue painter's tape and a pair of glass jars on it. The bathroom mirror was fogged as if someone had leaned close to check a hair and then left the room without wiping it down. The tub was dry. He checked the windows. All latched. He checked the closet. Empty. He locked the door behind us and held the knob for 2 seconds like a man testing a handshake. He said the old owner liked to stage the space sometimes for showings, but that there hadn't been any. He offered to change my vent grill. He did not offer to stay. That weekend I bought a cheap door sensor and stuck the contact to the upstairs unit's hallway threshold. The receiver plugged into an outlet in my living room and chimed if the contact separated. It wasn't sophisticated. It was a yes/no device. I slept on the couch with the receiver on my chest like a baby monitor. At 2:11 a.m. the chime pinged. Once. I stood in socks on cold tile listening. The footsteps started again, careful on boards that knew how to tell on you. The metal tick returned. I walked to my kitchen and put my palm to the ceiling. The warmth of a body doesn't transmit through lathe and plaster the way TV shows want it to. But emotion does. Yours. I stood there, hand on paint, caught between calling the police and calling no one, and being the person who moves because of something that can be solved with a screwdriver. I went upstairs. The sensor on the threshold had separated by a hair, enough to chirp. The door was locked. I bent down to check the contact and saw a smear of blue on the jamb at knee level. Painter's tape adhesive. The kind on the table. The kind that leaves a ghost when you pull it. The landlord came the next morning with a locksmith. The locksmith took one look at the cylinder and said it had been keyed differently from the rest, which is locksmith for someone didn't want the building key to work here. Inside, the glass jars had moved. One sat on the floor by the hallway, empty but for a faint ring at the bottom like something evaporated slow. The other was in the bathroom on the sink, lid tight, bead of water about to drop from the lip, resisting gravity with ceremony. On the back of the bathroom door, someone had taped a photocopy of a newspaper clipping. The date had blurred in the copier, but the headline carried its weight. Local muralist found in vacant flat. Timers LED2 discovery. The locksmith whistled and then stopped when the landlord looked at him. We left the jars where they were and installed a new cylinder with a key the landlord swore only he and I would hold. That night, I slept in my bed again, exhausted from handling so much empty space with my mind. The chime pinged at 2:09. I didn't go upstairs. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise reset the building into something cheap again. By Thanksgiving, the landlord had a painter in to brighten the stairwell. He picked a white that looks clean in photos and tells the truth in afternoon light. The upstairs unit remains storage. The jars disappeared. The clipping vanished. The sensor pings sometimes when I boil water. Steam slips under the threshold and reminds the contacts they can move. When the radiators start their yearly winter speech, I lie still and sort the sounds. Heat, pipe, board, hinge, step. The pacing is there less often now, like a habit someone is trying to quit. Once in a while the metal tick returns, and I picture a lid being turned with delicate care, enough to hold something without keeping it forever. People ask why I don't move. I like the tree outside my window, and the way the building holds the sun at 4 p.m. on clear days. Mostly, I think about timers, how they let you leave a room and still control the light. Whoever used that space knew how to set them. Whoever left knew how long things take to be found. I still have the extra key. It's on its own ring, separate from the ones I use daily. Sometimes I find it in my pocket without remembering I put it there. Keys do that when a door above you keeps a schedule you never agreed to, but somehow keep.